and just hammer the whole surface. And then I'm going to turn it. This can take several minutes. And we'll turn it again. One more time. Okay, now I could have done quite a bit more texturing if I wanted to, but I think that's pretty good. You get the idea that you really want to cover the entire surface of the copper washer with the little divots from this end of the embossing hammer. So now I'm going to turn it over, and we're going to use the fine tip just on the outer edge of the washer, just around here. Now I'm avoiding the center of the washer. I'm just working on the very, very outer edge. Okay, we're almost finished. Just a little bit more. Okay, I think that's good enough. I could have hammered it quite a bit more. It's really up to you and your personal taste. And I think that you can see the little divots in the washer better on the finished bracelet. This is the sample from my book. And you can see that I've hammered the entire washer using this end of the hammer, and then I turned it over and did the outer edge with this end. You can see that a little bit better. Okay? So if I'm going to use copper washers to make a bracelet, for example, and I'm using a flat bead such as the coin pearls that were used in this bracelet from my book, then I'm pretty much done as far as texturing and hammering my washers is concerned. I'm ready to wrap a pearl onto the washer and then connect them with the figure 8 links. However, if I'm going to make a bracelet like this one, as you can see, it has a round bead inside instead of a flat bead. So what I've done is, after texturing the washer, I used a doming block to dome the washer so that it just makes a better frame for a round bead. So here's your doming block. What I'm going to do is take my textured washer and I'm going to turn it over, textured side down, and very carefully place it right here in the center. And I'm going to use this nice large tool here and place it right in the center of the washer. And I'm going to use my resin mallet, and you could also use just an ordinary hammer from the hardware store. It doesn't really matter. Just don't use your nice quality chasing hammer for this. You'll ruin it. Okay? So just a couple of taps. And if you need to turn it a little, that's good. You can see now there's some dimension on the washer, and it's ready to connect into a bracelet. Once you've textured and domed some washers, you want to go ahead and make a bracelet or necklace out of them, and I'm going to show you how to do that. Basically, I'm going to show you how to attach the bead that is framed by the washer. So first thing you want to do is go through your stash of beads and choose the right one for the washer. Here we have a beautiful turquoise bead, but I can tell right away by looking at it that it's much too large for this particular technique. And that's because, well, you can tell when I pick up the washer, it picks up the bead. That means the outer diameter of this bead is much too large for the inner diameter of the copper washer. The reason it's too large is because I need to consider how this bracelet's going to be put together. So you can see here that I have connected my beads that are framed with copper washers. I've connected them with 16 gauge figure 8 links, and you need to have some room for those between the inner diameter of the washer and the outer diameter of the bead. There just has to be a space here, a little gap. And so this bead's no good for that. We'll set it aside. Let's try this one. See, I think that's just about perfect. There's still plenty of room that I can later connect some figure 8 links in here, as you'll see in my book, Contemporary Copper Jewelry. Okay? And of course you can tell also by lifting this up. Okay, once you've chosen your bead that's the correct size for your washer, you'll need to test some wire on it. I have a piece of 20 gauge round dead soft sterling silver wire. I'm going to try it on my bead, see if it fits. Yep, sure does. Okay, so this is 10 inches of wire, just about perfect length for this. I might have to trim some off, but I'd rather cut a little bit too much and have to trim some off than not have enough. So the reason I use silver on this bracelet is it's simply my own personal taste. I like the look of silver with copper. So that's really the only reason. What I'm going to do is I'm going to bring the bead to about the center of the wire. And you don't have to measure it. I just eyeball it. Okay, so I brought it to the center of the wire. Now I'm going to place it on the washer like this with the textured side up. And I'm going to hold it with my thumb very firmly. I don't want the bead to travel. I don't want the wire to move. So first I'm going to take this end of the wire and I'm going to bring it underneath like this. And then I'm going to pull it through nice and tight. And sometimes it helps to take your chain nose pliers or your flat nose pliers and give that a little tug. So it's a nice tight wrap. Next thing I'm going to do is turn this around. And I'm going to wrap this wire end. Now the reason I'm doing this is because I don't want the bead to just come slipping off the wire, because ultimately we are going to wrap the washer 3 times. But I do one side on one end and then the other side one wrap, and that's just to keep the bead from falling off. So let's pull this nice and tight. If you can't pull it tight enough, go ahead and use your tool. Wrap it firmly around the washer, and I'll even press it gently so as not to create tool marks, but I'll press it against the washer like that. Now I can go a second time. And again, you want to pull it really nice and tight. and you can press it down. Now if the wires have separated, go ahead and press them together a little bit. And we're going to go one more time. So you'll have 3 wraps. Now why 3 wraps? It's just a personal preference. I like the look of 3 wraps. I think 3 is a magic number in art. Just looks good. Okay, so that's 3 nice tight wraps. I'm going to turn this over. We need to do 2 more on this side. And again, if you need assistance, go ahead and use your tool, because you can pull your wire much tighter with a tool than without it. Don't let the wires cross. They're starting to cross on here, so I'm going to fix that. This is very stubborn. There we go. Just doesn't look good if it's crossed. Okay. Now I can see the wires are separating a little, so I'm going to press these together. And one more time. Okay, so this is what we have so far. We have the washer with the bead in the center. It's wrapped 3 times on this end and 3 times on this end. The next thing that we're going to do is we're going to wrap this wire around what we call the neck area, or the area between the outer edge of the bead and the inner edge of the washer. We're going to wrap this 1 time, and then this 1 time, and then we'll go back and forth, wrap a couple more times. Okay? So it's important to note that we're running this wire across like this in front of these 3 wires. And I think I'm going to use my tool again. Pull this down. And you want to pull this pretty tight if you can. Okay, then turn it around. Do the same thing on this end. The reason I'm going back and forth is that if you wrap this neck area 2 or 3 times on this end, well, then the bead is going to shift and it's going to end up over here and it won't be centered. So you wrap this 1 time and then come over here and wrap this 1 time. Okay, and now I'm going to wrap this a 2nd time. And I'm going to pull it nice and tight. And it goes across like that. Same thing on this side. Come up through the back side. Okay, I think I can go 1 more time on each end. So let's pull this down. And the wire is getting really work hardened, but because I started out with dead soft wire, it's not really a problem. Also, this is not a very heavy gauge, so the finer gauges can be easier to work with. And I'm going to bring this up to the top. It gets more and more difficult to work with the harder it gets. Okay, so we'll just repeat the same thing. We're just going to wrap this neck 1 more time. Like that, and then we'll bring it up. Okay. And just making sure that these are nice and snug. So this is what we have now. We have the copper washer, the bead's been wrapped onto it 3 times, and the neck has been wrapped 2 times with both wires coming out the top. This is important because I'm going to trim off the excess wire, and then I'm going to spiral each end, and I want both spirals to show on the top. So the 2 wires have to be on this side of the washer. In other words, you don't want 1 wire coming out this way and then another wire coming out the back side. So bring in my cutter. And I think we'll just trim it so that it's about 1 inch long. I'm just eyeballing it, doesn't have to be measured. Okay, so now we're ready to create a little spiral. To do that, I'm going to take my small round nose pliers and take hold of the tip of the wire near the end of the tool, press it into my thumb and roll it over, just like that. Same thing on this end. Oops. Okay, and just roll it over. Then I'm going to use the tip of my chain nose pliers to come in, and if it bends back like that, just make an adjustment. It's okay. Just tighten that down a little. Okay, then spiral it in. When you're spiraling, you want to put the spiral in the tool near the back of the tool, as close as the back as you can get it. It's a little bit awkward because this is such a small piece, it's hard to get it in the very back. But get it towards the back, and you want the spiral facing the tip of the tool, just like that. Okay, and then you're just going to spiral it in, nice and tight. Maybe you can see it from this angle. Okay, that's one spiral. You just need to do the second one. Again, we're going to tighten this a little bit because we really want a nice tight beginning to our spiral. Okay, we're just going to spiral this in. Okay, and then you want to use your tool to very carefully press this spiral against the bead, and then this one also needs to be pressed firmly against the bead, because if the spirals stick out, they can catch on your clothing when you're wearing your bracelet or your necklace. So sometimes you have to do a bit of adjusting even after you've made your spiral. This one keeps moving, so I'm going to put him back where he belongs. Right there. Okay, and there you have it. So to make the bracelet, all you're going to do is connect these little elements here using doubled figure 8 links. And you can read all about that in my book, Contemporary Copper Jewelry. You'll need as many links as will fit for your bracelet, for your wrist size. Add a toggle or any type of clasp that you want, and you have a finished bracelet. Now I'd like to show you how to do what I call the twining vines technique. And this is from my book, Contemporary Copper Jewelry. As you can see, I have used wire to embellish a flat bead with some spirals. It's really kind of a fun thing to do. So we'll set this aside. First thing I do is I measure and cut some wire, and I test it on my bead to make sure that it's going to fit. So let's see, yeah, this is 18 gauge, dead soft, round copper wire. It's about 9 inches or so, and it fits, so I'm going to put the bead aside. Now you're going to need round nose pliers and chain nose pliers. First thing that we're going to do is we're going to make a double wrapped eye pin loop that will go on one end of the bead. So what I like to do is take hold of the wire at what I call the 1/3, 2/3 position, and it's about, almost in the back of the tool. Now, where you place it on the tool is going to determine the size of the loops on your double wrapped eye pin loop. So I like this position right here. I think that's good. I'm going to put my left hand into what I call the hitchhiker position, and that's just to help you remember that your hand is in a fist, but your thumb is up, just as if you were a hitchhiker. I'm going to go ahead and open my hand so I can place the long length of wire inside, then close my hand, and my thumb goes right here. And you can see that my thumb is pressed right against the wire, against the tool. Now my left hand is not going to move. My right hand's going to do all the work. What my thumb is doing is it's pressing the wire against the tool, and as I turn the tool in my right hand around like this, I'm pressing the wire against the tool with my thumb, but that's all I'm doing. Now sometimes when I'm teaching people how to do this, they'll go like this and the wire comes on top of their fingers and they wonder what to do. And I tell them, just turn your hand a little bit like this and it'll come right in front of your fingers. Now when my right hand gets a little uncomfortable, I'm going to use my middle finger to open the tool, rotate back, close the tool down again, and just roll the wire around the tool again, just like this. So that's one complete rotation. You can see on the back that it's gone one time around the tool. Now if I want to go a second time, first thing I need to do is get the jaws on this plier out of the way, this one right here, because the wire can't go any further forward. So I'm going to open up the tool and just lift that on top, close the tool again, and then I have a couple of choices. I can keep rolling forward, or I can take my fingers and wrap the wire around the tool just like this. You know you're finished when you hold the tool like this and you can see what looks like 3 wraps around the tool, but is actually 2. That's your double wrapped eye-pin loop. Okay, so the next thing that we need to do is remove the tool. We're going to use the chain nose pliers to do what we call breaking the neck. The way to do that is to hold the loops so that they're facing down toward the table. Insert the tip of your chain nose pliers into the loop. Then put out your index finger like this in your left hand. Place the loops on the tip of your finger. Hold the wire with your thumb, and then leave your left hand still. Your right hand is going to do all the work. You're just going to push your wrist forward like this. That bends the wire and it breaks the neck. What that does is it seats the double eye-pin loops on the straight wire. Okay? Next thing we want to do is we want to wrap what we call the neck area, that's right below the loops, right in here, with this wire. So I'm going to turn it like this, with the short wire on the bottom, insert my round nose pliers, close the tool, and now I'm going to change hands. Now it's very important that you get the right position of the wire on the tool when you change hands. So say for example I had put the tool in my hand like this. Hold out your right hand like this in a backwards L. This is your long wire, this is your short wire. So you can tell when you look at your hand, this is not correct. So you need to turn the tool, turn a little bit more, and a little bit more. Now you have it, a backwards L. Okay? Pick up your chain nose pliers, take hold of the wire with the tip of the tool, and simply wrap it over nice and tight and let go. Be sure to let go before you've pulled the wire down. I'll show you what happens if you keep pulling. See what happens? You kink the wire. You don't want to do that. So I'm going to press that out. Okay. Now I'm going to turn the tool in my hand again. This time, I'm turning it so that the long end of the wire is pointed generally toward my right shoulder. Makes it easier to pull the wire under like that. Okay? Now we're ready to put the bead on. Now before I make my second pair of loops, I'm going to hold this so that I cannot look through the loops. In other words, you don't want to hold it like this. See, now I can look through the loops. You want to hold it like this. It doesn't matter if the short wire here is pointed toward you or away from you. You just don't want to be able to look through the loops. Okay? Once again, we're going to use the round nose pliers. This time I'm going to take hold of the wire about 1/2 inch or so above the bead. And I try to put it on the same place on my tool as I did before, so that I get 2 loops the same size. Hitchhiker position. Your thumb is placed on the wire. Your left hand never moves. Your right hand rotates the wire around like this. Loosen up the tool, bring it back, close it down, roll it around and around. Then of course you have to lift this up, put it on top, roll forward as far as you can. When the bead stops you, you have to take your fingers and wrap the wire around with your fingers, just like this. Now, just as before, you have what looks like 3 wraps on the top here, but in actuality, you have 2 loops. Okay, so now I'm going to put the tool in my left hand, just to make sure I've got the right orientation. Nope, let's fix that. Okay, time to break the neck. Using the chain nose pliers just as before, just bend it back. Now that looks good. Okay, it's in my left hand. I'm ready to wrap the neck. Take hold of the end of the wire, wrap it over. Now I've turned it so that this double wrap tie pin here is pointed toward my right shoulder. Just makes it easier to wrap it under like this. Okay. Now what you're aiming for is 2 loops that are oriented in the same direction and the 2 wire ends that are pointed straight up, just like this, because you need these 2 wire ends to do the twining vines technique. Okay? The way that we do that is we press this wire down across the bead like this, and this one comes down across the bead like this. What we're going to do is we're going to twist these 2 wires together in a sort of spiral, but the spiral is going to be flat. So the way to do that is to hold it in place with your thumb. So you can see that I have the wires twisted. Now I have to put my thumb here to hold this wire flat against the bead. I'm just going to pull this around like this, and I'm going to start to pull this one. Both of these wires are going in the same direction. As it happens, they're going in a counterclockwise direction. You can go clockwise if you prefer. Nice and tight. It's really important that you press it firmly with your thumb. You can see the spiral that's beginning to emerge. Okay, you can see that. Now the next thing that I like to do is, if I notice that my eye pin loops are a little crooked, I like to go ahead and fix those. So we'll just gently realign that one. And the same thing with this one. There, that's better. So here we are at this point. The next thing we need to do is spiral the ends, which is kind of fun because this is where the decorative element comes into play. Now I can spiral this wire from here down into this area, or I could spiral it in this direction and the spiral could end up here, and this one could end up down here. So I think what I'll do is I'll spiral this wire in this direction, which means that I need to hold it like this, in this orientation. I'm going to take hold of the end of the wire in the tip of my round nose pliers, or near the tip. And get my thumb in here if I can, so I can press my thumb against the wire and just begin a spiral, just like that. You can see that. And then I'll do the same thing on the other side. Bend it nice and tight as you can, just to get it started. Then go ahead and use your chain nose pliers to press that tip of the wire in and tighten it. And the same thing on this side. And if it slips, don't worry. Just turn it back where it needs to go. Take your time with this because you really want a beautiful beginning to your spiral. Okay, so now I'm going to spiral in the wire a little bit. Now I'm using the back of my tool, or near the back of the tool, to spiral in the wire because that's where I have the most leverage.